Good. All right. So I have a few of your questions here. So turn with me to chapter 4. So again, right, a very strange story. Kind of outrageous story. Seems a lot of unfairness taking place, right? I see, for example, Sosa mentions that I think both Sosa and Rubinov, right, are saying, well, God is blaming Cain for the death of Abel, but God really is the big instigator here, right? If God hadn't played around with Cain's emotions, right, in a way he pushed him to kill his brother, right? Cain was minding his own business. And now God, in a way, creates this chain of events which leads to the death of Cain. So both of you, right, Reuben and right, King, absolutely, right? Again, God is kind of creating trouble, right? We see that, I mean, even in Genesis 1, he's creating trouble by putting this tree in the middle of the garden, right? I'm still seeing God as kind of a troublemaker, right? Good. So we'll look at this, right? Another issue. Yeah, a lot of you are asking why he didn't accept Cain's offering, right? And it's true. It's perplexing, right? In the text, we don't really have an indication of what was wrong with Cain's offering, at least not a clear. I'm going to ask you, right, as we get into the text, what is the problem, right? And then interesting, one of you mentions, right, Granick mentions, why is there a whole big deal about Cain's name and Abel is kind of, so this is important detail, right? Granick has noticed a really important detail, which has to do with, and this is very good reading, right? When you notice the details, Cain is like, there's a whole speech, right? Eve, right? It's talking and giving him a name, blah, blah, blah. There's like a whole thing going on. And then Abel is kind of like on the side, right? Why is the text doing this? What's the reason? We'll come to that. Really interesting observation again by Granick about you have to know Hebrew for this, right? The exile of Cain in Hebrew is Nod. And then later, Cain settles in the land of Nod. So contradiction. I had not noticed that. So I want to explore that with you guys today. Why is the text doing this play on word, right? Okay, so let's begin. Okay, I'm gonna, so main issue, right, with this text. You know the story, right? You have two brothers. I'll review since some of you might not have read it, right? Two brothers. And in fact, I think it's Cain actually who has the idea of offering something to God. So actually Cain is kind of like he's the one who is spiritually inclined here in the relationship, right? It's not Abel who says, oh, let us go unto the Lord, right? No, Cain is like, let's do this. Let's go and offer something to God. So very nice initiative. Abel just follows, right? Like a little brother. They both offer their thing. And then God makes a very strange decision, very unjust, looks at Abel, favors Abel, ignores Cain. And then, of course, a whole chain of events is provoked. Cain is angry, he's hurt, he turns on his brother, kills him, and then we have strange punishment that God gives Cain, which is exile, right? Okay. Now, so let's start figuring out some of these things. Anybody figure out in the text what was Cain's problem? Now, the text gives us clues, right? There it's and again, don't bring me something your pastor or your tradition says. I want the text. I know there's a lot of teachings exist about what was wrong with Cain, which are not found in the text. So whatever you say, make sure you're based in the text. What was Cain's issue? Why did God not accept Cain? Anything going on? All right, so I'm gonna see who has their hands raised. All right, let's start with Staich and then King and then Pierre-Antoine. Go ahead.
Well, if you go through it all, you said you don't want religious explanations. I don't think this is a religious explanation, but I'll go with it. If you think about it, for all you know, um, like you said, there isn't much here. Honestly, there's nothing here implying anything. It just says that God did not look with favor on Cain's offering. Question is why? We were talking actually about that in the break rooms. It is quite possible that Cain gave it not out of heart, rather out of obligation. His parents told him about God, what happens to everything, and unlike them, he should continue because even though they messed up, they still love their children, Adam and Eve. So they told him about you should do this, you should do that. Of course, there was no sacrifices and offerings back then yet. So maybe Cain thought, okay, here I will give. I've done so much. I don't feel like giving this I because I've put so much time and effort, but because I have to do it, fine, I'll give it to my father who threw my parents out of the Eden. Whereas Abel wanted to do something for God because even though he threw Adam and Eve out of Eden, uh, he was still given a chance to live. So just like I was giving in the break room comparison, imagine if your child came with $2,000 worth of gifts and said to you, "Here, I take it. It cost me $2,000. It pains me to give this to you, but I have to because you told me to." Versus a child that goes and for I don't know how many weeks tries and puts something together, even though this costs maybe 200, 300, $400, and gives it to the parent with, in a sense, this is I'm giving everything to you, as an expression of love. Compare that to those two things, and you'll see which one the parent would take. Parent would say, "Yeah, thank you so much," to the one who spent 2 grand, but may not quote unquote look with favor, even though they might not tell him. Now, this is God we're talking about it. However, the other child might be the parents would be happier with his gift. I, I
So what you're
for
saying actually is I like what you're saying, but I'm wondering if you can find any indication in the text that supports what you're saying, right? This is important. We can't just imagine,
I
right? We have to find
absolutely.
some clues. Is there any clues in the
Prof-
text that supports what
Professor,
you're
I
saying?
don't think there's clues in the text for anything.
Ah, there is, there is.
They just came and gave offering. It says that Abel was a shepherd and Cain was a cultivator of the ground.
Yes,
So
why does the text say this? There is a reason. This
I
is
mean,
a clue, guys.
it really doesn't matter because later on God accepts both offerings. It doesn't.
Okay, well let's wait and see what the others say.
Okay,
Let's
yeah.
see if we have other
Okay,
versions, if other
okay.
perspectives. Let's see, Pierre-Antoine, go ahead. Anything in the text, guys? Stick to the text. Remember, be rigorous. Anything in the
Um,
text? Any clue?
One is that Cain is very arrogant.
How do you
Um,
know that?
I'm gonna get to it.
Okay.
Hold on. I'm trying to find. I don't really remember why I can never find this verse. Blah blah blah. That's not where I want. Okay. Verse 9, chapter 4 says, okay. It says, then the Lord said to Cain, "Where's your brother Abel?" And he was like, "I don't know." He replied, "Am I my brother's keeper?" I mean, I don't know. I kind of find that arrogant because, like, how are you gonna say that to God first and foremost? Like, that's just kind of like weird to me. I find that to be arrogant, but I don't know. And also, like, my other assumption of Cain is that, like, he lets his anger get the best of him, because in verse, I really need to remember, like, the exact verse. In verse 5 and 6, it says, "But on Cain and his offering he did not look down with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, 'Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast?'" Okay, actually, this continues. So pretty much God's just like, "Why are you mad? Like, you don't need to be mad. It's like, it's not that serious." But then in verse 8, it says, "Now Cain said to his brother Abel, 'Let's go out to the field.' And then while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him.
Yeah, so you get a sense after, right? But maybe Cain is under some stress here, right? I think Sosa is saying that, right? Sosa is saying he's arrogant because of how God treated him, right? But what I'm looking for is before. Is there any indication before? And there's some clues. Let's see if you can find them. There's some clues before. I mean, it's not easy to find. I have to give you that, right?
Okay.
But there is some indication before as to what was the issue with Cain's offering, or maybe just with Cain, right? We're gonna see. All right, let's see who else can. But good try, right? Pierre-Antoine, nicely. You were basing yourself on the text. That's good. And it's good also to look after the fact. I mean, the true character is sometimes revealed, right, in moments of stress. So you're on the right track. This is valid. But I would like also to find some elements of before. Kestenbaum, can you accept the challenge?
I mean, you might be a bit disappointed because I was actually going to comment on something that Staich said. That's okay.
Sure.
I may not have entirely understood it, so correct me if I'm wrong, Staich, but this whole notion of God's duality in terms of his justice, whereby when it comes to Adam and Eve, he certainly creates space for them to acknowledge their mistakes. But with Cain and Abel, there seems to be a much more reactant element whereby he doesn't give that time to process what happens. I'm not sure exactly if at least the biblical narrative and the text itself supports that. I mean, God specifically asks Cain in the same style in which he asked Adam, "Where are you?" I mean, he asked Adam, "Where are you?" when he asked Cain, "Where's your brother?" And in each instance, it wasn't, and this is more the Hasidic approach, but it wasn't where are you in physical time and space, but where are you mentally? Where are you in terms of a spiritual plane? Where is your brother? Not in the sense of I don't know his whereabouts, but in the sense of you don't know where you are as an individual and your relationship towards me, towards your brother, towards society at large. So it was definitely a question not for God's sake, but a question for Cain's sake, for him to say, yes, I made a mistake. And in fact, in the Talmud, there's an idea that's brought down in Tractate Yevamot that silence is affirmation. So by God not responding to the question, am I my brother's keeper? He was in essence saying, well, of course you are. It was such an obvious question, it didn't even need a response. So I do think that God was giving both Cain and Adam that opportunity to rectify their mistakes. And I know we're not talking about the Tower of Babel yet, but it's just interesting to note that when it comes to the Tower of Babel, God does not give them that room to understand their mistakes, and he just goes straight into
no dialogue with Babel.
Yeah, that's
no conversation. Very good. Yes, I like what you said here. This is the center. Where is your brother? We're gonna come back to this, right? And I love the way you frame it. That it's kind of an existential question, not just where is he spatially, right? There's something deeper that God is asking Cain, and this is really the crux of the matter. We're gonna see. Okay, let's see. Sosa, Alim.
You can hear me, right?
Yep.
Just make sure my audio's good. Okay, so the reason I had is not as deep as what Kestenbaum said. I believe that one of the reasons could simply be, from the text, could be what was offered to God to begin with. I know when God punished Adam, he, made him a farmer and everything, and he pretty much just cursed his land, so things wouldn't be as successful for him. But basically, I know Cain offered him, says here, he worked the soil and he offered him fruits from the soil to the Lord, while Abel gave him fat portions from his firstborn of the livestock. So one thing I noticed was the fact that I think many could agree that fruit is a little bit more valuable and useful compared to fat. We're able to pretty much consume fruit. It could keep us alive, but I don't think many people would really be able to consume fat and it would do them any good. So it's interesting that God was able to pick the least useful option compared to the more useful option, such as the fruit. Now, granted, you could say the fruit because of Adam's soil, the fruit because of the tree of wisdom, even though it's not the same exact fruit. But at the same time, it's what was offered to God could be a reason for, his treatment to Cain, possibly.
Yeah, I want to stop on that. Where are my Hebrew speakers? Please look up Hebrew speakers. Verse 4. In my translation, it says that Abel brought the choicest, the best of his of the firstlings of his flock. What does it say really in the Hebrew? Is there an emphasis that he's doing an effort to bring the best? What do you see there, Goldstein?
Yeah, it says, Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground, and as for Abel, he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and from their choicest.
Oh, so the word choicest, not just the fat, right?
Yeah, but when I was reading that, I noticed the word also, because first it looked like only Abel brought like the better stuff, because it says that he brought the choicest stuff, but it says he also brought of the firstlings of the flock, so that implies that Cain also brought from the good stuff.
Oh, you're complicating things. So you're saying, and also Abel brought. Is that what? Let me see. So yes, verse 4. Let me look. Where is it also? Oh, Gamhu. Okay, also he, right, brought the choices. Oh, so you're saying that Cain also brought flocks?
No, not flocks, but it says the word also before it's saying that Abel brought the choicest stuff. So it not specifically meat, choicest fruit.
Okay, so it might imply that, okay, so he also gave the choicest, unless it says he brought the, wait, let me look at it again.
No, the verse says mibchorot sono. Sono means his flock, so it definitely means meat. Whereas opposed to in verse 3, it says pri ha'adama. That means the fruit of the soil. So definitely one brought fruit, one brought meat.
Well, why the also though? Why doesn't it just say Abel brought the meat? Why is there this gam, this also?
I think the gamhu is just to illustrate that they both gave sacrifices, not that they both gave the same sacrifice.
Yeah, it's like an emphasis, right? It's like you don't need to say that, right? Are you seeing what I'm saying?
It seems like it's there to on purpose to indicate.
Yeah. Gam who also he, right? Like it's like the text is. I'll have to look into that. This is intriguing. But
wait, also just another thing on that pasuk. That verse. It seems like it's not talking about like the specialness of the sacrifice. Like it seems like it's like the bechorot is like the firstborn, and then so is sheep, and then chel behen is like their, I think that's like their fats, literally.
okay.
So that could be like the best part of the animal, but I guess literally it doesn't mean, it means fats or something.
Exactly. So I'm wondering, right, the fat, is that the best part? I remember vaguely that in the sacrificial system, help me out, guys. Do you offer the fat or do you cut it out? I think there's some issue where you have to cut it out, right?
Yeah, I think it gets.
No, you don't eat the fats.
Right?
We don't eat them, for sure not. Yeah.
So watch how Abel is bringing the fat. It doesn't look like a great offering compared to the sacrificial system later on, right? Am I correct? Am I making sense? Anyways, okay. So, Sosa, exactly, right? Sosa, yes. I think this brings us to your point, right? There's two ways to read this, right? Either he did an effort to bring, I think this connects to what Stajich was saying. I think this is the basis for what Stajich was saying. It seems that Abel is making an effort to bring at least the firstborn of his flock, right? This is like the best in that sense. So that's one way of seeing it. So in a sense, we see that he's making an effort to bring the best. And so his heart, right, is a little more there than Cain, who just brings the fruit, right? So that could be the basis for what Stajich was sensing, right, in the text. And then we could also go in the path of Sosa, which says that actually his offering wasn't that great. The fat, God has no use for the fat. In fact, later on in the sacrificial system, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm vaguely remembering that you cut out the fat, which is not an acceptable part of the meat. Right, so maybe Sosa is right. It's not a great offering, and yet God accepts it, and that makes it interesting, right? Let's see what Wagler has to say. Okay, Wagler, nice. Wagler is saying the fat of the land. The word fat, it looks like means the most desirable part. And Alex enjoys the aroma of burning fat. According to the Talmud, he likes burnt offering most. Okay. And yes, indeed, the fat is removed. Okay. We shall eat no fat. Here's King quoting Leviticus. Guys, you're doing good. I'm with a good class. Okay, so we're sensing that, right? Abel's offering is kind of problematic, right? I was taught that Cain's offering was problematic because he didn't bring the first fruits like Abel, right? But here now we're shifting to maybe Abel's offering wasn't that great either. And yet he's accepted. So we have to go deeper. There's another clue before. It has to do with the way they're born. The way they're born is telling us something fundamental and will help us understand clearly why God prefers Abel to Cain. So let's switch a little bit. Let me switch the direction. Go to the story of their birth. Is there any clue there? I think Granick was the one already observing this. They're told very differently. What does this tell us about Cain, about Abel, the way they're born? What character traits do you discern already in the birth story, which then explains what God does? Because if it's not the problem of the offering, maybe it's a deeper problem, right? Remember, with Adam and Eve, it wasn't the fruit. Remember? Right? We concluded the problem was not that they ate the fruit. The problem was the character flaws, right? Eve, problem with, connection, Adam's weakness, right? So here maybe too, it's not the offering. Maybe it goes back further to some personality traits which needs to be mended or repaired, right? So look at the birth story and see if you read anything. Let me read it with you, right? The man knew his wife Eve, she conceived, saying, I have gained a male child with the help of the Lord. She then bore his brother Abel. Already there you should be thinking, whoa, what's happening, right? Such a different story for both births, right? And then continues, this is another clue. Cain became a tiller of the soil, and Abel became a keeper of sheep. There is a clue here too. Okay, tell me if you're seeing anything. So let's stick to the birth stories. Is there anything in the birth stories which you think gives us a clue? Oh, everybody wants to speak. Okay, let's start with Williams.
Maybe, I don't know, I might be wrong, but it sounds like because Abel is keeper of the sheep, he has more of a gentle kind of personality and more woman-like, while Cain is more man-like and he does the ground and all of that. That's
okay, yes, you're sensing something. You're sensing correctly, right? Abel is more, you're calling him more female, but there's something effeminate, yes, about Abel. Cain is more, I have the land, right? I own this. Abel is kind of over here, the poet, right? With his sheep wandering around. Yes, there's something, you're right, Williams, there's something like that going on. Good, let's see, who else? Alim, I haven't heard you in a while.
So I kind of feel like going back to what, sorry, who was the last person to speak? Williams?
Yeah.
Williams said about Abel being a little more effeminate, right? If I'm saying it correctly. I feel like this is a parallel to Adam and Eve, because Adam, his creation is a little more like hyped up than than Eve's, because Eve is like, he just took out her rib, while Adam, I guess, is seen as like the first one to come. So, and it also kind of goes back to what I believe Granick was saying about like Cain being Abel's like keeper. So in like some sense, Cain takes the role of Adam again, while Abel takes the role of Eve, in that Cain is kind of supposed to protect Abel in the way that Adam was supposed to protect Eve. And also another connection is that Cain is like a husbandman, which is someone who like cultivates the land, and similarly Adam was to cultivate the land. So I think it could be very significant to look at those parallels.
Yes, I think you're right. And in fact, I haven't told you guys this because it's a problematic passage, but we have the same passage with the word teshuka, desire, where Abel desires Cain and Cain rules over Abel. The same wording as in Genesis 3:16 applied to the two brothers. So what you are saying, I think, might help understand what's going on. I'm not clear yet about this Genesis 4, the Teshuvah in Genesis 4. I have to, but I think, Alim, you're observing very correctly that Cain represents Adam. He works the soil. He is also the keeper, right? I think, is it the same word? Let's check the Hebrew to make sure, right? Is the word keeper the same as what was given to Adam to keep the garden? I'm curious. Look with me, Hebrew speakers. Verse 9, when he answers, am I my brother's keeper?
Yeah, it's
Yes,
Shamar.
exactly. Same word. Okay, so Alim, you're on the right track. We have the same word to keep here that is used for Adam to keep the garden, right? So we are seeing connections between Cain and Adam and between Abel and Eve. I don't know what it means, okay? I don't know what it means yet, but you're raising a very interesting direction of interpretation, which I have to think about. If anyone wants to think about it with me, come after class. What Alim is hinting, I'm interested in that. Okay, great. Let's see who hasn't spoken in a while. Kestenbaum? Still looking at those birth stories, right? Indications in the birth stories. Go ahead, Kestenbaum.
Can I save it because it's not totally related to what we're doing?
Okay. Granik, anything in the birth? You're the one who brought it up.
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking about this now. So it's interesting that like I guess we see like explicitly in the verse that Cain's name like comes from the word for acquire, like kinyan. Yes. So it's interesting that I guess he was the product of Eve, sort of like I'm not sure exactly what it is, but kind of like feeling very much in control of him, and like this is my creation, sort of. Like this is an expression of my power, my creative power, sort of. So that kind of, I guess the implication is that sort of had an effect on him in terms of how he viewed himself as like sort of I'm like the progenitor of my parents' legacy or something like that. And whereas Abel, so etymologically, so I guess in the Hebrew his name is Havel or Hevel. That's a word that comes up in Ecclesiastes a lot, like futility of futilities. So it could be that he sort of had more of a recognition of like the sort of the I don't know, I guess the fleetingness of his life, and the he recognized that he didn't have as much control over his possessions or over his life even. So that was kind of, yeah, I don't know what I was thinking.
Excellent. Let me just summarize a little bit what you said here in the chat. This is very important, guys. I think we're getting there, right? The name, there's a word play in the text. Cain, which is the word for Cain, is the same root as the word kana, which is to acquire, to possess. So Cain contains he is the possessor, right? He's the one who owns. He's the property man, right? He's the owner. He's the landowner, right? He's the one who possesses. Abel is the opposite. He's the dispossessed. Havel, we'll come back to this word. I put it in the chat, right? Havel is the Hebrew word for Abel, right? Cain is the Hebrew word for Cain. Havel, we'll see it again in Ecclesiastes, which is why this text is basis, right? Havel means it means breath, like this. When you kind of breathe out, exhalation, and you're like, where is it? It's gone, right? Vapor. It means just like literally, breath, right? So Havel is the dispossessed, the one who owns nothing, the one who is a wanderer. In fact, his job, right? He's a herder of sheep. This is a nomadic, right? So you have here the farmer versus the nomad, or the settler versus the nomad, the possessor versus the dispossessed. And going further, the center of attention, right? When Eve has Cain, ooh, I made him with the help of the Lord. Behold, actually, in the Hebrew, it's even stronger. It says, actually, in the Hebrew, it says, and Cain was born, right? And Eve said, I acquired a man, the Lord. So actually, in the Hebrew, there's an ambiguity, whether it's with the Lord or he is the Lord, right? In the Hebrew, it just says, I acquired a man, that is to say, the Lord. You could also translate it like that. So Cain is the man, literally, right? In the American language, fits good, right? So he's the center, he's the possessor, he's the owner, he's the man. Abel, he's kind of on the periphery, he barely exists, he's vapor, he's the dispossessed, he's the wanderer. Now, based on these two character traits, which by the way, are not just about two brothers, they're about two kinds of people, right? I've written an article on this text commenting about immigration, right? And I've made some connections about, right? There's two kinds of people in the world. There's those who possess, there's the citizens, and then there's the disenfranchised, right? These are two groups right now, the refugee and the national, right? The one who is looking for a new home and the one who owns his home, right? So there's some elements in the text which can help clarify what should be our stance or what is the biblical stance on immigration, right? But now you're getting the idea. This is two types of people, two mindsets, two brothers. Now you can see what God perhaps is doing when he ignores Cain. What do you think? So now moving on, right? Moving beyond. So if you had an old question, save it, or an old answer, save it. What do you think, knowing this, Cain is the center, Cain is the man, Abel is here on the side, right, doesn't exist, has dispossessed. What is God doing when he turns his gaze away from Cain, away from the man, to Abel, the dispossessed, the non-existent? What is he doing? Okay, I already gave you the answer. Pierre-Antoine.
It's basically provoking him to be jealous, like kind of taking that attention away from him. Like it's an insult, is what I'm basically trying to say.
And what is he doing by taking the attention away from Cain? What is he trying to teach him? Remember, all things that God is doing, there is a teaching, right? There's a redemptive moment. What's he doing with Cain when he moves his gaze away from Cain?
Humbling him?
What? Tell me more.
Like by humbling, I think like I guess like kind of stealing from stage, like when he mentions like a child. Like when you think of a child and you're raising it and you spoil one child with affection, like, and you shower them with everything. And then like there's a child who's like always like ignored in a way. And then like you reverse the roles. It kind of, it's like a mental breakdown for like that child who gets the emotions, and it's just like, what are you doing? You can't do that to me. How dare you? Like, in a sense, kind of building that arrogance that I was speaking of earlier. And I think that's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely, right? For the first time, Cain realizes, I'm not alone. There's someone else. Oh, you're here? Right? You're here too, right? This is and you see the mental breakdown, the psychological breakdown Cain goes through when he realizes he's not the center anymore, right? God, in a way, is moving him at the periphery. He's pushing him and making Abel center stage. And this has a completely, it undoes him, right? His whole life is in shambles. In fact, he's so destroyed by this, he has to kill Abel now, right? To recover. Okay, good. Anything else? Kestenbaum, go ahead.
So this is what I was going to say earlier. So if you don't want to answer it now, that's fine. But then how does that reflect on Adam and Eve, that they too know what it means to be the refugee, to be the wanderer, and yet they have sort of failed in their parental responsibilities? I mean, they're the first parents in human history, but they failed at that responsibility to ingrain within their own children what it means to not see themselves as the center, to not see themselves as the national. So much so do they fail in this, that when their own son finally realizes that he is not the center of the universe, he doesn't know how to react, he doesn't know how to cope. And so his only means of coping is murder, is killing. Oh, if the lesson of the expulsion of Garden of Eve was supposed to teach or to universalize God in a way, or universalize humanity, it clearly did not do its job.
You know, I think what God taught Adam and Eve, he's still teaching the women and the men. This is an ongoing teaching, perhaps, right? Perhaps this was not just for Adam and Eve. Perhaps this was for all women and all men, right? So that's why, in a way, maybe it takes longer for humanity, for both genders, right, to internalize what was taught that one time, right, in Genesis 3:16. So my sense is that it takes longer than we think to assimilate some of the teachings. And we can see here, right, Eve in a way is still enclosed, right? I got a son with the Lord. Adam is still non-existent. Isn't it Adam who come on, where's Adam? He's the one who gave the seed, for Pete's sake, right? And yet it's still with the Lord. You still don't exist. So Eve, clearly, Kestenbaum, you're right, hasn't yet internalized this notion of, you know, the love, not there yet, right? Still hasn't yet completely awakened. So we are still, and I really believe we as women are still in the process of learning that lesson that Eve, you know, is trying to learn. So I think so I agree with you, Kestenbaum, they haven't learned much. Okay, great. Stage, go ahead.
Well, we've been jumping around a lot. I'm not sure if
You don't know where we are?
I was gonna go with what's called verse 7, and because somebody said, well, you mentioned, who said that he had to kill his brother. Well, I don't. In verse 7 says, if you turn to doing good, will you not be restored to favor? And if you look at it, it says restored. So he was in favor in the first place, no?
Let's see. Surely if you do right, it just says there is uplift in my text. If you do right. So it's not restored. You see what I mean? But let's hold on for that.
I'm going to go through a bunch of Bible translations. There's a bunch of Bible translations on the internet.
Yeah, let's hold that thought a little bit, because I'm getting there. I'm still trying to figure out the problem with Cain before we get into God's reaction. So hold that thought for a bit. Okay, so let me summarize, right, what we found with the issue, right? The question that I asked at the beginning of class, why did God accept Abel over Cain, right? So we saw a number of possible answers, right? So you can jot those down, right? On the one hand, maybe Abel offered a better offering, but then Sosa brought up that it wasn't that great of an offering, so it's not the offering. Then we looked at the birth story, and there we found some clarity, right? In a way, Cain was used to be the center of the universe. And in that sense, he is suffering from the same plague that Eve was suffering from. He is self-enclosed, right? Are you seeing the connections between Cain and Eve, right? Remember, he's born of her own. She's basically saying me and God, right? Adam is still in existence. Poor Adam, right? So he seems to be suffering from the same issue that Eve was suffering from in the garden, where there is only him, right? And in a way he was, how shall I put it, groomed, right? He was groomed by his mother to see himself as the man, the center of the universe, the one who possesses everything, right? The one who owns everything. And in a way, what God is doing by shifting his gaze on his brother Abel is opening up for Cain the dimension of the other. Okay, make sure you write this down, right? Let me say it again. What God is doing by shifting his gaze away from Cain is really helping Cain realize you're not alone. There's someone else. Open up, right, to the possibility of otherness, relationship, encounter. And this brings us to what Kestenbaum was saying at the very beginning. Where is your brother? Right? When God asks him this question, it's not just like, oh, where's your brother? I'm looking for him. No, it's like, do you have a sense of brotherhood? Where is the other within your psyche? Right? Does your psyche include your brother? Or are you entirely self-absorbed and narcissistic, right? It's very similar to Eve, right? Are you following what I'm saying? Put your hand in the screen, right? This is an issue. Cain's issue is not the offering or whatever, right? It's the issue that he is alone in the world, right? And in a way, what God is doing by shifting towards the inexistent, dispossessed Abel is really opening Cain's awareness, consciousness, awakening him painfully to the dimension of the other. It's always painful to really awaken to the dimension of the other, right? The other is always a source of pain, right? So that is what is happening. And in a way, when God asks him to go over that again, right? Where's your brother? What he's really asking is, where is your sense of connection? Where is the other in your life in general, right? And so now briefly, we have a couple minutes, the punishment, exile, right? And we didn't have time to go over the nod and the nod that Granik mentioned, which I would love to go over, maybe in the question and answer session. But let's look at the punishment of exile, right? It's interesting. He kills his brother. Normally in the biblical text tradition, when you kill, you die, right? Now, God doesn't, there's no capital punishment here, right? Instead, the punishment is exile. Now, tell me, how does exile, what could exile do to Cain to redeem him? Remember, all punishment has a redemptive intention, right? So what might be redemptive here in this exile for Cain? How is God in a way giving Cain a second chance, right? At correcting himself? King, go ahead.
Well, Cain was failing to realize that he's not alone, and so God puts him by himself. He exiles him so that he is alone, and he, I guess, in that contrast, he sees that he's alone and he has a family, so that he, again, is not alone, which is kind of confusing because I don't know where he gets his family from.
Yes, it seems there are other people, right? Clearly. That's a conclusion I've come to. That we have a story of a given family, but perhaps there were other families too. Yeah, so this is a whole debate, which I won't get into because we have no basis to debate.
Right, I blew my grandmother's mind when I told her this a couple years ago.
Yeah, so there's something going on, right? Cain is given, he's put in a situation which could actually help him grow, right? So let's continue. How does exile help in Cain's growth, right? Goldstein.
Well, Cain's issue is that he thought he was the center of the universe and kind of, seeing himself as the center of the universe. So when you're wandering around in a refugee, you're reliant on other people. You have to be a nicer person to them and kind of do what they want you to do so that they'll help you out. And it's teaching him how to exist in society with other people, with him not being the center of the universe.
Right, excellent, right? In a way, Cain now becomes the dispossessed. He becomes Abel, right? He becomes the wanderer. God is putting him in the shoes of his brother. And in this dispossession, in this exile, in this vulnerability, in this fragility that where Cain now, he doesn't own anything, he's not secure, he's not safe, right? Right there is the possibility for him to awaken to ethics, to society, to interconnection, right? So one of the benefits of exile, right? In fact, the whole book of Genesis, right, I would argue, is a theology of exile, right? One of the benefits of exile is to crack us open to the human connection, which we don't have when we're secure, right? We don't need others. We don't rely on others. So in a way, it's a way for Cain to open up to connection, right? When you're vulnerable, when you go through suffering, it develops, right, compassion or vulnerability, things that allow you to crack open, right? Just like Eve was cracked open by God, right, through childbirth, through her desire. Cain here is now being cracked open by God through the fragility, vulnerability, and the painful condition of exile, cracked open to reach out to others, right? Very good. I like that, Goldstein. Let's see a couple more hands. Let's see, Kestenbaum.
I think also on a way more fundamental level, I mean, yes, everything that we were just saying about what it means to be a refugee, but God himself also says to Cain that I will be with you as a wanderer. And that's a unique departure from the exile that we've seen of Adam and Eve, where God sort of says you're on your own. And then the text tells us that the cherubim, sort of locked up the Garden of Eden and no one else could enter. But this type of exile is way more open. Yes, you'll, be wandering from place to place, but not only will I be with you, but the world itself will be more open and more inviting as a result.
Where do you see God is going to be with him? I'm curious.
Here, I'll get the verse up. It's verse number 15. So the Lord said to him, I promise if anyone kills Cain, sevenfold vengeance shall be taken on him. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest anyone who met him should kill him. So there's clearly a level of protection. There's clearly a level of God consciousness that he's attributing onto himself. As in this sort of, I don't know, I guess you could call it guardianship, Adam and Eve were never privileged to receive.
I like what you're saying, but look at verse 16. And then Cain left the presence of the Lord.
Right. But again, it's interesting that it says that Cain left the presence of the Lord.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right? That's why had it said the other way, yes, I would agree. But I think it's those words very specifically and clearly, as opposed to, again, using the Garden of Eden, whereby God deliberately kicked them out.
Yes. Okay, very good. There seems to have been a presence of the Lord around Cain. And Cain intentionally is the one. So this would go with what Stage is saying in the chat, right? Was Cain redeemed, right? Did he learn the lesson? It's ambiguous, right? We don't know completely. We see he leaves the presence of the Lord, which is not a good sign, but then we see him building a city. And it's interesting, this nod. Oh my God, I have to do this. Let me do this. Why is the name of the city the same word as the word for his exile? I'm so intrigued by this. Do you see? Okay, go look at verse 12, right? Where it says, you shall become a ceaseless wanderer on the earth. And the Hebrew word, this is Granic, right? Is nod. And then you go to this verse 16, where Cain leaves the presence of the Lord and settles in the city. Is it the same word in Hebrew? No. It sounds the same though. Yeah, it's a word play. Goes to the city of Nod. It's a different word, but it sounds the same, right? What's the author doing? Why is he connecting the exile of Cain to the city where he's going to settle? I thought there's a contradiction. Anyone want to try this? I love this. Kestenbaum, you want to try?
Give me some time. Give me 2 minutes.
Okay, sorry, I saw your hand up. Okay, Goldstein, go ahead.
Maybe there was a specific city where wanderers kind of settled down or laid their hat or whatever, and that's why it was called Nud, the city of wanderers.
Yes, but it's not the same word, right? At least it's a different spelling, different root. So it's not the same word. I think, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. You know Hebrew better than me.
Translation says that the word here, the city of Nud, means wanderer.
Okay. Because you see how the spelling is different. That was my hesitation. So it's the same.
Yeah, I think there's an extra letter in there, but I think the root of the word is the same.
It's the same. Okay, so now
I think it's the same root. Yeah.
City of Wanderers. Okay, is Cain redeeming himself here? Is he obeying God by entering a city of wanderers? Maybe he's not completely disobeying. And in fact, there's a lot of good happening in the city, right? The whole culture is coming out of the city. I don't know if you noticed, but you have music, you have, technology, right? I see music and technology, right? And then you also have murder and polygamy. But it's a mixed bag, right? There's an ambiguity. Yes?
Because it says first that he settled in Nud, and then it says that he became a city builder and he named the city after his son Enos. So isn't that two separate cities?
Yeah, it looks like that. You're right. Yes. It's the land of Nud. It's not the city. It's a land of Nud. So you're right. It's a land maybe where refugees were kind of conglomerating, and then they built a city, and they became kind of like Cain, right? You see what I'm saying? it's ambiguous, right? It's we don't know quite if Cain learned the lesson. Ahmad, would you like to try?
Actually, I have a separate question. Whenever I can ask that.
Go ahead.
Where does Cain's wife come from, and who is she?
Yeah, we don't know. Because there's nothing in the text, right, that indicates anything. Clearly, though, I think your question shows that there were other people on the earth, right, than Cain's immediate family, right? Perhaps there were other, right, for sure, right, it seems, because he is actually meeting his wife somewhere else, and, you know, I mean, other people say, oh, this is just one other sister, right? You know that Adam lived like 1,000 years, so possibly it was one of the sisters of Cain, but we don't know, right? We are only speculating, we're not sure, right? So sorry. Let's see. Yes, and there's a tradition in the Talmud that they were twins. They were born with two sisters, but again, nothing in the text, right? These are interpretations. Okay, great. All right. We need to.
Can I say something, Professor?
Yes, Regina, go ahead.
So upon reading like all these years that these humans were alive or whatever, what makes, like, are they counting these people in dog years?
What do you mean?
Like, if someone lives 900 years, you know, like, everyone knows that's not real. Like, you cannot live 900 years. It's not possible unless they're counting in dog years. Like, you know, every 7 years is, you know, because it doesn't make sense to me. Like, you cannot live 1,000. Like, it says one of them lived 30 years, had a kid, and then lived 900 years. Like, how does that work?
So apparently, right, based on the text, we know that before the flood, it was a different kind of human race, right? Because right after the flood, God says, I will reduce the year span to 120 years, right? Implying that before it was actually these huge lifespans, right? Of course, we have no way of testing or verifying, but the text itself seems to imply that these were actual lifespans, right? So we cannot know for sure. We just know what the text is saying, right? Because then God changes it, right? That's how we know it's not dog years, like you say, right? God then says, I will reduce it to 120 because I'm sick of these, you know, human beings. Basically, that's what he says, right? I want a shorter lifespan, so get rid of them faster. So yeah, so these actually seem to be the actual years. Okay, great.
Oh,
right.
one more thing.
Yes.
When we're talking about like Cain and Abel, right? In that breakout room that we were in the beginning, we were discussing with my group that it's not, like, I find it kind of weird that Cain and Abel, like, if you have kids, right? Let's say you have two boys and two of them bring you something. You're not going to make one feel better than the other in order, you know, like, you cannot say your brother did good and you did horrible. You know, it's gonna create like tension between the siblings, which is why, like, I'm not saying it's okay to kill your own brother, but, you know, if God's a parent, don't you think like he would have been like, next time do better, maybe work with your brother to do something? But he didn't say that. He said that it's almost like a sin in a way of what he brought to God himself. And that's why I guess Cain felt this sort of envy toward his brother, that he should have been better than his brother, because that was the tension that was created.
Yeah, so you're right. God creates this crisis, right? But remember, the reason was to help Cain open up to the dimension of otherness, right? So if God seems to be cruel with Cain, right, there is a reason he's trying actually to work with Cain, right? In fact, the center of the story is not Abel, it's Cain, right? Even in this context, right? God in a way is trying to teach something to Cain, and that's why he creates this situation, right? Which seems very unfair, but really remember we talked about how God is trying to awaken Cain to the presence of his brother, right? So there's really an intention behind it for the sake of Cain, right? And Cain doesn't get it. he ends up killing his brother, right? And still God gives him again another chance to redeem himself through exile, right? Through being himself marginalized, so that he can then open up more naturally to others, right? So make sure you go back, right, and listen to the to what we've been saying, because there's something, right? There is a clear intention, right? A pedagogical intention on the part of God here. Okay, guys, I need to conclude for the sake of everyone, but you can stay after if you still want to talk a little bit. I'll stay about a half hour, but let me stop the recording for now.